May isn't here now, so let's talk about it. I got a story to tell you. Actually, I have seven. Seven? So, I had a very good reading month in May. The lowest rating for books that I gave 4 stars on Goodreads, which, ooh. So not only did I read 7 books, but they were all good. They're all good books. And I should mention, I do live in the northeast of the US, and we're pushing for some changes in our government and trying to get police to act a little bit more civil and to stop profiling blacks in America. And I mention this because last month I consumed 7 books, and half of these books they feature black protagonists. 100% of these books are written by white people. So I say this because in the month of June, I'm trying to remedy that quite a bit and to read beyond peach. So I'm going to start most diverse. Boom. With the Amber Lowe dossier, which I read this book in the month of April, and the Armistice and Amnesty I consumed this month. Well, May month, the month of May. This book is about trying to overthrow a government and start a revolution because of their fascist douches, and also about gay rights and other stuff and a lot of other political things. But at its core, that's what these books are about. The first book is about trying to infiltrate this government, being found out, and then things are just unraveling before everyone, and a revolution is being lit. Book 2, essentially a small civil war is broken out, and we are trying to, they're being labeled as terrorists, and we're following Cyril's sister. He's a spy in this book. We're following his sister a little more, and it turns out she's dealing with some of the same shit he is. She's trying to get back her son, and then in the third book, we've got the climax of everything. Basically, there's going to be a new election, and the revolutionaries calming down, and we're changing things. And that's all I can tell you without giving anything really away. Great characters. I absolutely love this. The whole series is solid. I have nothing negative to say about it. If you're looking for something queer to read for the month of June, this I do recommend. Now I'm going to move on to discussing a couple of the books that poetry. This I know Dr. Atlinger, and she is she writes a lot of books that are a little bit more feminist twist to them. Feminist twist. They have feminist themes. Some of the poems in here do have a slight religious twist to them, but they're more explorative than preachy, so I do recommend her work. This is her second collection of poems, and a lot of her poetry is featured online in a bunch of different magazines. So I recommend checking her out. Staying in that nonfiction realm-ish area, let's talk about Will My Cat Eat My Eyeballs by Caitlin Doughty. Big questions from tiny mortals about death. What she means by that tiny mortals is these were questions posed by children about death. And I don't know if the book itself is marketed to be read for children. It's incredibly funny, and it's dark, but it's incredibly funny, and if you're an adult, you're gonna absolutely love it. But I do think that if your child, probably ages like 7 or 8 and up, if they have a lot of questions about, like really weird questions about death, like, I don't know, like what happens to a body in space, or if a guy dies on your airplane, or what do people smell like when they die, and you know, things like that. It's quirky and weird. It is dark, but it's necessary, and it's interesting. If you have any questions about death, I recommend the book. I know that there are more. The only issue that I had, Cass, about this book was that it is just a series of questions, and then it just ends. There's no real acknowledgement or a conclusion. The ending just felt a little abrupt to me, so that was the only issue I had with it. But other than that, it's actually, I don't want to say cute, but it's a fun book, surprisingly, even though we're talking about death. Next up, let's talk about the first book that I completed in the month of May. I keep wanting to say June. June and January. They keep coming to my mind. It's not January. Thank God. But anyway, the Book of Koli. This is the first book in a series, a 3-book series, I believe. I'm looking forward to the next book, let me tell you. Koli is a young man, I think he's about 15. So this boy is growing up in a dystopian time. He lives in a very small community, like super small community. This is his story of growing up in this community until the point when he turned 15, he goes through training, and he ends up being exiled. He tells you this right away, so I'm not giving anything away, but what I will tell you is that he is exiled for is a crime, a small crime, harmless, and it involves technology. So the tech in this world is almost regressive. It does take place in the distant future, and it seems there's some catastrophic event that had happened that we don't really know what it was upon entering this book, but whatever it was, it pretty much made the people that are in existence now don't really know how to use technology, and he does discover some in a way, and she goes by the name of Monono Aware. Okay, I kept saying it aware, but it's Aware. This tech, I will not tell you what it is, but it's got the personality of a human, and it's glorious. And it just, I need more people to read this book so that we can talk about it, because it's just, it's heartwarming to me, and it gives me hope. And I feel like this book in particular just leads you to not just about preservation, but about survival, but in such an innocent way. His language makes him feel so much more innocent, and he is really a sweet kid, and I want to see the best for him. So I'm looking forward to the next book, very much so. And I want more people to read this, because I want to talk about the tech. And I don't want to talk about the tech just because it was such a nice surprise for me, but I was one of the first readers of the series. It was just like such a nice surprise for me that it's just something that I want other people to be like, wait, what? What the hell is this? So please read. And then speaking about tough times. Break the Bodies, Haunts the Bones talks about police brutality. It talks about black rights. It talks about racism. As a motorcycle. All with the twist of a paranormal. This is a genre-bending book. It's a horrific paranormal sci-fi fantasy novel. This is a ghost story. So this book follows Jane, her brother Henry, in Swine Hill, which is one of those pig, I want to say meat packing facilities. It's pretty much the only real income in this town. And so the people that work there, they don't like change. They don't want anything to happen. It reminds me very much of the mentality of the coal country and how they didn't want their industry to die down, but these people were losing their jobs left and right, and they were not willing to make any changes. But Jane is followed by, she's basically possessed by this ghost who's a super gossip, and she can read people's minds. And when she does that, she lets Jane know what everyone's thinking. She's black, so she gets people's first impressions of her most often. Her brother Henry is a super genius, he's super smart, and his ghost is also someone who had wanted to tinker around with things, and when Henry's ghost really kicks in, oftentimes the ghost will take over and start, he basically blanks out and he has no idea. He can lose months at a time. He has no idea what he's done. One thing that Henry's done is help, he made a little Frankenstein type, I don't want to call it a monster. It's a pig. It's a Frankenstein style pig. And he's a very nice man. And he meets Jane right away in the beginning of the book. And this big pig is taking over production at the pig plant. And he starts making other pigs that are human. And these pigs start taking over the jobs of the humans. And this book is just a giant symbol of the way people are treating blacks, and then we have the same issue with immigrants and people thinking that they just come in and steal their jobs. And it's a really great metaphor for all of this, and it's something to discuss. And I highly, highly recommend this book if you're looking for a really weird, trippy, kind of creepy, and trippy is probably the best way to describe it. But if you're looking for a really unique, not even like just a buddy read, but a book for a book club, this I highly recommend. Jane and her brother are essentially being stalked by this officer who's possessed by a ghost who it makes his eyes bleed. Ugh, so creepy. But this book also had some musical tie-ins, which was the only thing that I really wish that they had pushed a little bit more, because it would have been cool to have a soundtrack associated with this novel. And the ending was a little rough for me, but this is a really good read. It's bizarre as hell, but it makes a great social statement, and I think that a lot of people need to be reading this book, especially now. So if you're looking for something unusual, this is it. Last book I finished, probably not physically, but it was Weather by Jenny Ofel. Now this book follows a middle-aged white woman and her, I want to say and her family, but she is a librarian, and she lands that job without any qualifications. This is about her day-to-day activities. She takes up I want to say a part-time job of helping her, I think it was a professor that she once worked with or studied under. She runs a podcast that is called Hell and High Water, and it's about climate change. She's asked to help answer some of the emails because she's become so overwhelmed. Now, what makes this book so interesting to me is that it feels like it's edited out so that you're only getting half a scene or snippets of a scene, and you kind of have to use your assumptions or to actually like fill in what's happening. It's almost like watching a movie but only getting the dialogue. So I found it interesting. The woman becomes kind of like a survivalist in a way. She starts getting super into prepping, and she also is considering an affair, and she's just, it's interesting but also ordinary. So it depends on how literary you want to read. I gave this 4 stars, and I do recommend it if you're into, I do recommend it as a book. It's just something, it's a little different. If you're not into it, it's only like 120 pages. So that's everything that I consumed in the month of May. I hope that your month was equally as successful, or at least enjoyable. Now we're looking forward to June. I hope we're looking forward to June. It's Pride Month, and I am going to be participating in a couple of buddy reads. So, and I will discuss those in my next video. So until that, you'll see it shortly. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate the views and your comments. And let me know what your favorite book was from the month of May. And if you have any recommendations for me for the month of June, I'll keep an eye out. Thank you.